Hello, I'm James Caldwell. Welcome to the Classical Guitar Practice Room. Today I want to talk about practicing scales with the right hand fingering of IM, AM, IM, A. Now, in previous videos, I've talked about doing all combinations of two-finger alternation, including the thumb and the pinky. And we wound up with 20 ways to play a scale using lead fingers. Segovia's suggested fingerings include just a subset of alternation pairs. And there's a seventh one at the bottom that says IM, AM, IM, A. A lot of people don't practice that one, but I do. And I wanted to talk about how to get that working. So if we consider this new right hand fingering pattern, you will notice that it goes I, M, A, M, I, M, A, M. So it's a wave effect of these three fingers back and forth. And so it's an efficient way to use the right hand to play scales. Now, I had been practicing my scales with all combinations of two-finger alternation for years before I tried doing this IM, AM thing. And I actually found it very tricky to implement. A couple of things I've noticed about using this pattern is that if you play any of the two-octave scales, such as C major, when you start with the I finger and you go up and down, you will end with the I finger. Let me demonstrate here. This is C major, two-octave major scale. So we started with the I finger and we ended with the I finger. That means that if you just wanted to play up and down that scale repeatedly without stopping, you would always be starting with the I finger. I'll do it twice here, and even playing through it twice, we should end up on I. So that's very convenient for the two-octave scales. You can go up and down as many times as you'd like, and the pattern always starts with I. However, if you play one of the three-octave scales, what you will find, and I'll use G major out of the Segovia book, the G major three-octave scale, you'll find that when you start with I and you go all the way up and descend all the way back down, that last note will be played with the A finger. Here's a G major three-octave scale. With the A finger. So we have a bit of an option here. If we're practicing any of the three-octave scales, when you start with I and you descend back, you should end on the A finger. And we can either stop and start over with I and do that repeatedly for practice, or we can just end on A and go with it. In other words, it would be like starting the scale again with the A finger. So it would be A, M, I, M, A, M, I, M, and so on. And you would find that if you started with the A finger, you went all the way up a three-octave scale and came back down, you would end on I. And that means if you played the scale 4 times, up and down without stopping, you started with I the first time. The second time you'd be starting with A. The third time you'd be starting with I. The fourth time you'd be starting with A, and you should end on I. I'll play up and down the G major scale twice to demonstrate. So here is a three-octave G major scale, starting with I. So you could play it up and down repeatedly like that without stopping and just let the pattern flow back and forth, back and forth. And every other time you'd be starting with I, and every other time you'd be starting with A. That's how I practice it. I said a moment ago that when I first started trying to implement this IM, AM fingering, that I found it quite tricky, and I really did. I came up with a couple of ways to practice it just to get that motion, that wave motion back and forth going. I came up with this little exercise to practice the IM, AM fingering. I play 4 notes on one string chromatically, just like that, going up 1, 2, 3, 4. And with the right hand here, I'm going I, M, A, M, I, M, A, M. And that's a good simple way to practice this and begin instilling that motion in your right hand. Instead of just going up chromatically each time, if you go up and come back, you would find that starting with I, the second time through you'd be starting with A, back to I, so going up and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2 is a good way to practice this and keep the right hand finger I, M, A, M, I, M, A, M. You'll find each time with the one finger over here, you'll be starting with I, and the next time you'll be starting with A, the I and A. I used to run through those little exercises a few times before trying to put it in whatever scale I was practicing. And even practicing that little exercise, I still found it tricky to get it going in the scales because you end up crossing strings with whatever finger is next in the sequence. And generally at those points I'd have to stop and think briefly or really stare at this hand. And I'm sure you know what I mean. Anytime you focus on one hand, the other hand may kind of temporarily lose its memory. But with little diligence, I got it going, and I include this IM-AM pattern in my scale practice in all of the scales in this book. And it doesn't matter if you're playing the Segovia scales or some other scales. I would encourage you to include this pattern for further development of right hand finger independence. Thanks for joining me today in the Classical Guitar Practice Room. Until next time, practice your scales. I've been James Caldwell. See you in the next video.